The smallest act of kindness is often witnessed by the person who has the power to change your entire life. Claire Whitmore had heard countless speeches about leadership, compassion, and corporate responsibility. She had delivered many of them herself from polished stages beneath dazzling lights, receiving standing ovations from investors who measured success in quarterly earnings instead of human lives. Yet every applause felt strangely hollow. As the CEO of Whitmore Industries, one of the country's fastest-growing technology companies, Claire had everything people admired. She lived in a breathtaking penthouse overlooking Chicago's skyline, traveled in private jets, and commanded the respect of thousands of employees. Still, an uncomfortable question had quietly followed her for years. If no one recognized her wealth or position, would anyone see her as simply another human being worth helping? On an unusually cool autumn morning, she decided to find out. Leaving behind tailored suits, expensive jewelry, and a chauffeured car, Claire dressed in faded jeans, an oversized gray hoodie, worn sneakers, and an old canvas jacket purchased from a thrift store. Her neatly styled chestnut hair disappeared beneath a knitted beanie, while a little makeup erased the polished image that magazine covers had made famous. Standing before the mirror, she barely recognized herself. For the first time in decades, she looked completely ordinary. Her security team protested. Her executive assistant insisted the idea was reckless. Claire politely declined every objection. Today, she wanted no protection, no privileges, and certainly no one opening doors simply because of her title. She wandered through quiet streets where fallen leaves gathered along cracked sidewalks. People hurried past with coffee cups in hand, focused on meetings, errands, and schedules. A few glanced toward her worn clothing before looking away without a word. Others stepped around her instinctively, assuming she was simply another struggling stranger blending into the background of city life. Every silent dismissal settled heavily inside her heart. Around noon, Claire reached a small neighborhood park. Tucked between rows of modest brick homes, children laughed near an aging playground while elderly couples occupied shaded benches beneath towering maple trees dressed in shades of amber and crimson. The peaceful scene felt worlds away from polished conference rooms and endless presentations. She sat alone on a weathered wooden bench, quietly observing life unfolding without urgency. Across the walking path, a man in a faded flannel shirt carefully unfolded a brown paper bag while sitting beside a little blonde girl whose bright smile seemed untouched by life's hardships. Nathan Brooks looked tired in the unmistakable way only hardworking parents did. His hands carried small scratches from physical labor, and the knees of his worn work pants revealed years of use. Yet every time he looked at his daughter Emma, exhaustion melted into gentle affection. Emma giggled as Nathan pretended the simple sandwich inside the paper bag was a grand feast prepared by the world's greatest chef. She applauded dramatically before taking a tiny bite, making Nathan laugh despite whatever burdens rested on his shoulders. Claire watched from a distance, unexpectedly captivated. There was no luxury surrounding them, no expensive possessions, no visible success anyone would celebrate online. There was only a father determined to protect his daughter's happiness with whatever little he had. As a chilly breeze carried golden leaves across the park, Claire realized she had finally discovered something no board meeting had ever been able to teach her. She simply didn't know yet that this ordinary father and his final homemade meal were about to transform both their lives forever. Claire lowered her eyes as another gust of cold wind swept across the park. The fading autumn sun offered little warmth, and for the first time in many years, she understood how long an ordinary afternoon could feel when no one expected anything from you. She watched families come and go, co-workers eating takeout on nearby benches, teenagers laughing as they hurried past, and elderly couples feeding birds without noticing the woman sitting quietly by herself. Her expensive watch had been replaced with an old, second-hand one that barely kept time, yet the hours somehow moved even slower. Across the path, Nathan Brooks folded the brown paper bag after Emma finished her small sandwich. He carefully brushed crumbs from her jacket before zipping it all the way to her chin. "You ready for your big spelling test tomorrow?" he asked with an exaggerated serious face. Emma nodded proudly. "I'm going to get every word right because you helped me practice." Nathan smiled as though she had just announced she had won an Olympic medal. "That's my girl." Claire couldn't help smiling at the simple exchange. Nothing about the father and daughter appeared extraordinary, yet there was a quiet warmth surrounding them that seemed richer than many luxury homes she had visited. Nathan reached into his work backpack, searching every pocket before sighing softly. Emma noticed immediately. "Daddy, did you forget your lunch?" she asked. Nathan hesitated for only a second before answering with an easy grin. "Looks like I did. Good thing you finished yours." Claire realized the answer wasn't true. She had watched him hand almost the entire sandwich to Emma while pretending he had already eaten earlier that morning. The little girl accepted his explanation without question, but Claire saw the hunger he tried so hard to hide. Just then, Emma spotted a bright red leaf drifting across the grass. Laughing, she chased after it toward the playground, leaving Nathan alone on the bench for the first time. He quietly rubbed his stomach before leaning back with tired eyes fixed on the sky. Claire looked down, unsure whether she should speak. Before she could decide, Nathan noticed her sitting alone. Their eyes met briefly. Instead of looking away like everyone else had, he offered a polite smile. "Pretty chilly today," he said. Claire nodded. "Colder than I expected. Autumn has a way of sneaking up on you." His voice carried no pity, no suspicion, only ordinary friendliness. After a brief silence, Nathan opened the folded paper bag once more. Hidden inside was half of the sandwich Emma had secretly left behind. He looked toward his daughter, smiled to himself, then looked back at Claire. Without hesitation, he broke the sandwich into 2 uneven pieces. Naturally, he kept the smaller half. "Would you like some?" he asked. Claire stared at him, convinced she had misunderstood. "No. I couldn't." Nathan shrugged gently. "It's just a sandwich. Food tastes better when someone shares it." Claire felt her throat tighten. She had attended charity galas where people donated millions while photographers applauded. Yet this simple offer carried more sincerity than every polished speech she had ever heard. Slowly, she accepted the larger piece. "Thank you," she whispered. Nathan took a small bite of his own portion and smiled as though nothing remarkable had happened. Emma ran back toward them holding the red leaf above her head like a trophy. "Daddy, look! It's shaped like a heart." Nathan laughed. "Then we'd better keep it." Claire looked at the father, the daughter, the half-empty paper bag, and the tiny heart-shaped leaf resting in Emma's hands. In that quiet moment, she realized the greatest generosity did not come from abundance. It came from someone willing to share the little they had left. Claire finished the last bite of the sandwich slowly, almost reluctantly, as though she feared reaching the end would somehow erase the quiet warmth of the moment. It was simple: homemade bread, turkey, lettuce, and a thin layer of mustard. Nothing about it belonged in a gourmet restaurant, yet it tasted more genuine than countless five-star meals she had attended beside investors and celebrities. Nathan folded the empty brown paper bag with careful hands instead of throwing it away immediately. It was a habit born from years of making every small thing last a little longer. Emma skipped back to the bench, proudly placing the heart-shaped leaf inside the folded bag as if she were protecting a priceless treasure. "Now it won't get broken," she declared. Nathan smiled. "Good thinking." Claire watched them quietly, struck by the effortless teamwork between father and daughter. There were no expensive toys, no phones keeping them distracted, no urgency to impress anyone. There was only conversation, laughter, and a kind of peace money could never purchase. Eventually, Nathan stood, adjusting the worn backpack over one shoulder. "Come on, Em. We still have to stop by the library before it closes." Emma nodded, then turned toward Claire with innocent curiosity. "Are you going to be okay?" The question caught Claire completely off guard. Thousands of employees asked if she was satisfied with quarterly reports. Journalists constantly asked about business strategies. Investors wanted forecasts and numbers. Yet no one had asked such a simple question in a very long time. She managed a gentle smile. "Yes. I think I will." Emma reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small knitted glove missing one fingertip. From inside it, she removed a tiny wrapped peppermint candy. "Here," she said, placing it into Claire's hand. "Dad says candy always makes cold days a little better." Nathan looked embarrassed. "You don't have to give away your favorite candy." Emma shrugged. "She looks like she needs it more." Claire felt emotion rising unexpectedly inside her chest. She closed her fingers around the tiny piece of candy as though it were something precious. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. Nathan offered another warm smile before taking Emma's hand. "Take care of yourself." Then they walked away beneath rows of golden maple trees, disappearing gradually along the park path until only scattered autumn leaves remained. Claire stayed on the bench long after they had gone. She looked at the folded candy wrapper, the fading sunlight, and the empty space where Nathan and Emma had been sitting only moments before. Her phone vibrated inside her jacket. More than 30 missed calls. Messages from board members. Reminders about an emergency executive meeting. A television interview. Dinner with international investors. The world she had temporarily left behind was demanding her immediate return. An hour later, a black luxury sedan silently pulled to the curb outside the park. Her head of security rushed forward, relief spreading across his face. "Ms. Whitmore, everyone has been looking for you." Claire quietly climbed into the back seat without answering. As the car pulled away, skyscrapers slowly replaced neighborhood streets. Glass towers reflected the evening sky while familiar buildings welcomed her back into a world of polished marble, tailored suits, and billion-dollar decisions. Yet everything looked strangely different now. She reached into her pocket, feeling the tiny peppermint candy and remembering the father who had divided his last sandwich without hesitation. Somewhere beyond those towering office windows, a man with almost nothing had given away what little he possessed without expecting recognition, gratitude, or reward. And for the first time since becoming CEO, Claire wondered whether the company she had spent years building truly understood the meaning of wealth at all. Some encounters last only a few minutes, yet they quietly rewrite the questions we spend years asking ourselves. The following morning, Whitmore Industries buzzed with its usual precision. Executives hurried through polished hallways carrying tablets and financial reports while assistants coordinated meetings down to the minute. The building reflected everything Claire Whitmore had built over the past decade: discipline, efficiency, and relentless ambition. Yet, as she stepped into the executive boardroom wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit, a silk blouse, and understated diamond earrings, she felt strangely disconnected from the world around her. A presentation filled the enormous screen with colorful graphs showing record profits. One vice president enthusiastically discussed reducing employee expenses. Another recommended closing 2 regional service centers to improve quarterly margins. Around the polished conference table, heads nodded in agreement. Claire listened quietly, but every chart reminded her of something entirely different. A folded brown paper bag. A heart-shaped autumn leaf. Half of a homemade sandwich. "Ms. Whitmore?" the chief financial officer asked. "Do you approve the proposal?" Claire looked up. "How many employees would lose their jobs?" The room fell silent for a moment. "Approximately 127, someone answered. "Necessary adjustments," another executive quickly added. Claire slowly closed the report in front of her. "Necessary for whom?" "No," one responded immediately. It was an unfamiliar question. The meeting ended earlier than expected, leaving several executives exchanging puzzled glances as Claire walked directly back to her office. Once the heavy glass door closed behind her, she opened the small drawer of her desk. Resting inside was the peppermint candy Emma had given her the previous afternoon. She had not eaten it. Somehow it had become a reminder she was unwilling to lose. Claire pressed the intercom. "Danielle, could you come in for a moment?" Her longtime chief of staff entered carrying a digital tablet. "Is everything all right? I need you to help me find someone." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Claire described Nathan carefully without mentioning her disguise. "Single father. Early 30s. Worn flannel shirt. Lives somewhere near Maple Grove Park. His daughter is named Emma. Daniel smiled politely. That's not much to go on. I know. She hesitated before adding, please keep this confidential. Within hours, Daniel quietly contacted community outreach partners, local schools, and neighborhood organizations that Whitmore Industries occasionally supported. By late afternoon, a file appeared on Claire's desk. Nathan Brooks, 36 years old. Widower. Father of 8-year-old Emma Brooks. Maintenance technician for a small apartment complex during weekdays. Evening janitor at a neighborhood community center 3 nights each week. Weekend handyman whenever extra work was available. Annual income barely enough to cover rent, groceries, and school expenses. No criminal record. No government assistance. No outstanding debts beyond a modest medical bill left from his late wife's illness. Claire continued reading in silence. A handwritten note from one community volunteer caught her attention. Always the first person to help elderly neighbors carry groceries. Frequently repairs broken furniture for families without charging them. Declines donations whenever possible, saying others need them more. Claire leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed by a mixture of admiration and sadness. Nathan had never known who she was. He had not shared his food hoping for a reward or an opportunity. He had simply seen another human being sitting alone, and decided no one should be hungry if he could prevent it. Outside her office window, the city's skyline shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. Inside, Claire made a quiet decision that had nothing to do with charity, and everything to do with respect. She would meet Nathan Brooks again, but this time, she intended to learn not how little he owned, but how someone carrying so much hardship had managed to preserve such extraordinary kindness. 3 days later, Claire Whitmore found herself standing across the street from the apartment complex where Nathan Brooks worked. She wore another simple outfit, a charcoal sweater, blue jeans, and a lightweight jacket, carefully avoiding anything that hinted at the life she normally lived. This time she was not pretending to be someone else out of curiosity. She was there because she wanted to understand the man whose quiet generosity refused to leave her thoughts. From a distance, she watched Nathan carry heavy toolboxes from one building to another, greeting every resident with the same calm smile. An elderly woman struggled to unlock her apartment door while balancing 2 grocery bags. Before she could ask for help, Nathan set down his equipment, carried the groceries inside, and fixed the loose doorknob that had been bothering her for weeks. When she reached for her purse, he gently shook his head. "Don't worry about it, Mrs. Henderson," he said. "Just promise me you'll call if it sticks again." The woman smiled with grateful eyes. "You're too good to this neighborhood." Nathan laughed softly. "I'm just doing my job." Claire noticed something remarkable. No cameras recorded the moment. No audience applauded. No one would ever post the story online. Yet Nathan treated every small act of kindness as though it were simply part of being alive. That afternoon, after finishing his maintenance shift, Nathan walked 3 blocks to Emma's elementary school. Children poured through the front entrance, shouting happily as parents waved from the sidewalk. Emma spotted her father immediately, and ran into his arms with such enthusiasm that Nathan nearly lost his balance. "Guess what?" she exclaimed. "I got every spelling word right." Nathan knelt until they were eye level. "I knew you would." He pulled a folded certificate from her backpack, pretending to inspect it like a priceless work of art. "Looks like I'm walking home with a genius today." Emma giggled and slipped her small hand into his. Instead of heading directly home, they stopped at a modest grocery store. Claire followed discreetly from a respectful distance. Nathan compared prices carefully before placing milk, bread, eggs, oatmeal, and a few fresh apples into a shopping basket. Emma quietly reached for a box of chocolate cereal, then looked at the price tag. Without saying a word, she gently returned it to the shelf and smiled at her father, as if nothing had happened. Nathan noticed anyway. He picked up a single chocolate bar instead and handed it to her. "How about we split this after dinner?" Emma's face lit up. "Deal." Claire felt a lump rise in her throat. They had mastered a language unfamiliar to many wealthy families, the language of quiet sacrifice. That evening, back inside her office overlooking the glittering skyline, Claire stared once again at Nathan's file. She thought about everything she had witnessed with her own eyes. He never complained. He never expected sympathy. Most importantly, he never measured people by what they owned. Claire opened her calendar and cancelled 2 investor dinners scheduled for the following week. Then she asked Daniel to arrange something far more important. "Invite Nathan Brooks to Whitmore Industries," she said calmly. "Tell him we'd like to discuss a maintenance consulting opportunity. Don't mention my name. Don't mention the park. And don't offer him favors." Daniel looked surprised. "You want him to earn whatever comes next?" Claire nodded. "Exactly." She closed the file with quiet determination. Nathan had shared his last meal with a stranger because it was the right thing to do. Now it was her turn to offer something just as valuable, not charity, but an opportunity built on dignity, honesty, and respect. True character is revealed not when opportunity appears, but when pride is quietly tested. Nathan Brooks almost ignored the email. It arrived late on a Thursday evening after he returned from cleaning the community center, his work boots still dusty from a 12-hour day. Sitting at the small kitchen table while Emma finished her homework beside him, he opened the message on his aging laptop. Whitmore Industries invited him to interview for a temporary maintenance consulting position at its corporate headquarters. The compensation was better than anything he had ever earned, but the invitation felt strangely out of place. Emma looked over curiously. "Is it good news?" Nathan smiled uncertainly. "Maybe. Or maybe they sent it to the wrong person." Emma grinned. "You always tell me not to decide before trying." Nathan chuckled. "You're getting too smart." The following Monday morning, Nathan arrived at Whitmore Industries wearing his cleanest clothes, a neatly pressed light blue shirt, dark slacks, and the same worn brown shoes he reserved for special occasions. Though polished until they almost shined, the shoes still carried years of use. As he entered the magnificent glass lobby, surrounded by marble floors and towering artwork, he immediately felt out of place. Employees in tailored suits walked confidently through security gates while conversations about investments and international projects echoed around him. Nathan quietly straightened his shirt and reminded himself why he was there. Not to impress anyone. Simply to do honest work. Unbeknownst to him, Claire watched everything from a private observation room overlooking the lobby through one-way glass. She had insisted that no executive receive special instructions. Nathan would be treated exactly like every other applicant. She wanted to know whether the kindness she had witnessed in the park remained unchanged under pressure. Before the interview even began, the first test arrived unexpectedly. A young receptionist accidentally dropped an entire stack of presentation folders across the polished floor while hurrying toward a conference room. Several executives walked past without slowing down. Nathan immediately knelt beside her. "Looks like these escaped," he joked gently. Embarrassed, the receptionist smiled nervously. "Thank you. Everyone's already running late. Then we better be quick." Within moments, every folder had been reorganized and placed back into her arms. Nathan stood, dusted off his trousers, and headed toward the waiting area without mentioning what he had done. Claire silently watched the security footage replay on a nearby monitor. Daniel looked toward her. "You realize helping delayed his own interview?" Claire nodded softly. "Exactly." Minutes later, Nathan entered a conference room where 3 department managers waited. The interview began with ordinary questions about maintenance systems, preventive repairs, and workplace safety. Nathan answered honestly whenever he knew something and admitted openly whenever he did not. Instead of exaggerating his experience, he explained how he learned quickly and believed every problem had a solution if people respected one another enough to work together. One interviewer intentionally challenged him. "You're applying for a corporate position with no executive experience. Why should we choose you over candidates with stronger resumes?" Nathan remained calm. "You probably shouldn't," he replied with a humble smile. If someone else is more qualified, they deserve the job. I'm only asking for a fair chance to prove what I can do." The room became unexpectedly quiet. Hidden behind the observation glass, Claire felt the same emotion she had experienced the afternoon Nathan shared his last sandwich. He was still exactly the same man. Surrounded now by wealth instead of fallen autumn leaves, he neither begged for opportunity nor resented those who had more than he did. He simply carried his dignity with him, believing that honesty itself was enough. In that moment, Claire realized the interview had already revealed everything she needed to know. Sometimes the greatest surprise is not discovering who someone else is, but realizing who we ourselves have become. 2 days after the interview, Nathan received another call from Whitmore Industries. He was offered a 3-month consulting contract to evaluate maintenance operations across several company facilities. It was not an executive position or an act of charity. It was honest work with fair pay, earned through his own experience and integrity. Nathan accepted with quiet gratitude. "Congratulations, Dad!" Emma shouted, throwing her arms around him the moment he shared the news. "Does this mean we can finally fix the heater before winter?" Nathan laughed, hugging her tightly. "Yes. I think this winter might feel a little warmer." On his first official day, Nathan approached every task exactly as he always had. Instead of remaining inside offices studying reports, he walked through mechanical rooms, spoke with custodians, electricians, receptionists, and security guards. He asked questions no executive had bothered to ask in years. Which equipment failed most often? Which repairs were repeatedly delayed? Which problems frustrated employees the most? Rather than criticizing anyone, Nathan listened carefully, taking handwritten notes inside a small spiral notebook he carried everywhere. Employees quickly noticed something unusual. For the first time, someone seemed genuinely interested in making their jobs easier instead of merely measuring performance. Claire observed his progress through daily reports but resisted interfering. She wanted Nathan's work to stand entirely on its own merits. A week later, department managers gathered for a facilities review meeting. Nathan presented several practical recommendations that required surprisingly little money: reorganizing maintenance schedules to prevent emergency repairs, replacing unreliable suppliers with local businesses that responded faster, creating direct communication channels between frontline staff and management, and investing in preventive inspections instead of expensive last-minute fixes. Some executives looked skeptical. One senior manager leaned back in his chair and said, "These ideas seem rather simple." Nathan nodded respectfully. "Most lasting solutions usually are." Another executive crossed his arms. "Do you have data proving they'll work?" Nathan smiled politely. "Not yet. But I have years of experience fixing problems after they become expensive. I'd rather help prevent them before they happen." Claire remained silent at the head of the table, carefully watching every reaction. She noticed something the reports never captured. Nathan never tried to dominate the room. He never spoke over others or claimed to know everything. When someone offered a better suggestion, he welcomed it immediately. His confidence came from purpose rather than pride. At the end of the meeting, Claire finally spoke. "We'll implement every recommendation as a pilot program." Several executives exchanged surprised glances. The senior manager hesitated. "Based solely on one consultant's opinion?" Claire looked around the room before answering calmly. "Based on practical thinking supported by someone who understands the work from the ground up." After the meeting concluded, Nathan remained behind to collect his notebook. Claire entered the nearly empty conference room alone. For the first time since the afternoon in the park, they stood face to face without crowds or observation windows between them. Nathan smiled politely, unaware of the connection they already shared. "Thank you for believing in my ideas, Ms. Whitmore." Claire returned the smile, hiding the emotion that briefly crossed her face. "You earned that opportunity, Mr. Brooks." As Nathan turned to leave, something slipped from his notebook onto the polished floor. Claire bent down and picked it up. It was a carefully pressed heart-shaped autumn leaf, the same one Emma had found in the park. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Nathan thanked her, tucked the leaf safely back inside his notebook, and walked away. Claire stood silently, watching the conference room door close behind him. He still had no idea who she truly was, but she knew the moment for hiding the truth was quickly coming to an end. The truth has a quiet way of arriving exactly when both hearts are ready to receive it. 6 weeks after Nathan's recommendations were introduced, the results spoke more clearly than any presentation ever could. Emergency repair costs had dropped dramatically. Employee satisfaction surveys showed their highest scores in years. Small maintenance problems were being solved before becoming expensive emergencies, and communication between departments had improved beyond expectations. Even the executives who had doubted Nathan's ideas admitted that the changes were working. On a crisp Friday afternoon, Claire asked Daniel to organize a company-wide appreciation gathering in the main atrium. Hundreds of employees filled the spacious hall, expecting another routine corporate announcement. Nathan stood near the back with maintenance supervisors and custodians, convinced he had simply been invited to hear the quarterly results. Emma sat beside him, proudly wearing her favorite blue dress after coming directly from school. She looked around in amazement at the enormous building where her father now worked. Claire stepped onto the stage as polite applause echoed through the room. After thanking the employees for their dedication, she paused longer than usual. "Today," she began, "I want to tell you about something that happened before any of these improvements began." The room grew quiet. Claire spoke without looking at her prepared notes. She described walking through the city alone, exhausted and questioning the purpose behind years of success. She spoke of sitting hungry on a park bench where nearly everyone passed without noticing her. Then she described a single father who had divided his last homemade sandwich with a complete stranger because he believed no one should go hungry if he could help it. Nathan slowly lifted his eyes toward the stage. Emma gently squeezed his hand. Claire continued, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "That stranger was me." A wave of astonished silence swept across the atrium. Nathan stared at Claire, unable to reconcile the woman standing before the company with the quietly dressed stranger from the autumn afternoon in the park. Every conversation, every meeting, every unexpected opportunity suddenly fit together. Claire stepped down from the stage and walked directly toward him. The room remained completely still. Stopping a few feet away, she smiled warmly. "Mr. Brooks, I've wanted to thank you properly ever since that day." Nathan searched her face before letting out a quiet breath. "You were the woman in the park?" Claire nodded. "Yes." Nathan looked down for a moment, then laughed softly in disbelief. "I thought you looked familiar. I just couldn't figure out from where." The audience laughed gently with him, easing the tension. Claire reached into the pocket of her blazer and carefully unfolded a familiar brown paper bag. Inside rested the pressed heart-shaped leaf Emma had placed there weeks earlier. "I've kept this ever since," Claire said. Emma's eyes widened. "You still have it?" "Every day," Claire replied. She turned toward everyone gathered in the atrium. "Nathan never knew who I was. He never expected recognition, money, or opportunity. He simply chose kindness because kindness was already part of his character. That's exactly the kind of person every great company should learn from." Thunderous applause filled the building. Nathan stood quietly, slightly embarrassed by the attention, while Emma beamed with pride beside him. Claire extended her hand, but Nathan surprised her by offering a warm embrace instead. For a brief moment, the CEO and the single father stood in the middle of the crowded atrium, united not by wealth or position, but by one ordinary sandwich that had quietly transformed two very different lives. 1 year later, the brown paper bag still rested inside Claire Whitmore's office, preserved behind a simple glass frame. Visitors often assumed it represented an important business milestone, but only a handful of people knew the truth. It had never symbolized profit, prestige, or success. It represented the afternoon when a hungry stranger was reminded that compassion was the greatest form of wealth. During the past 12 months, Whitmore Industries had changed in ways that quarterly reports alone could never explain. Nathan's maintenance program had expanded across every company property, reducing costs while creating safer, more welcoming workplaces. More importantly, Claire introduced a new tradition called the Last Sandwich Initiative, encouraging employees to notice colleagues, neighbors, and strangers who might need kindness before they needed charity. Every department received paid volunteer hours, and community partnerships flourished throughout the city. The initiative quickly became the company's proudest achievement, not because it generated publicity, but because it quietly changed thousands of ordinary lives. Nathan never sought recognition despite becoming Director of Facilities Operations, a position he accepted only after months of persuasion. His office remained modest. The old spiral notebook still sat beside his desk, and inside it rested the heart-shaped autumn leaf Emma had carefully pressed. Whenever younger employees asked him the secret behind his success, he always smiled and gave the same answer. Treat every person with the same respect you'd offer if you already knew their story. Emma had grown taller, more confident, and just as thoughtful as ever. At 9 years old, she proudly told classmates that her father fixed buildings and helped people feel valued. One Saturday afternoon, she and Nathan returned to Maple Grove Park carrying a small picnic basket. The maple trees had once again turned brilliant shades of red and gold, scattering leaves across the familiar walking paths. As they reached the old wooden bench, they noticed a young mother sitting alone with her little son. The child looked hungry while the woman quietly searched through an almost empty purse. Nathan glanced at Emma without saying a word. She smiled because she already understood. Together they walked over. Nathan unpacked the sandwiches they had prepared, while Emma handed the little boy an apple and a peppermint candy. "We made extra," Nathan said gently. "Would you like to share lunch with us?" The mother's eyes filled with grateful tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what this means today." Nathan simply smiled. "Actually," he replied softly, "I think I do." From a nearby walking trail, Claire observed the scene from a respectful distance. She had come to the park alone that afternoon, hoping to revisit the place where everything had begun. She considered walking over, then quietly decided against it. This moment belonged entirely to Nathan and Emma. Watching them share another simple meal with complete strangers, Claire realized something beautiful. Kindness had not ended with one extraordinary afternoon. It had become a habit, passed from a father to his daughter, from one family to another, creating ripples that neither money nor power could ever purchase. As the autumn breeze carried colorful leaves across the grass, Emma laughed while the two children chased them through the park. Nathan looked toward the sky with quiet gratitude, thankful not for the opportunities that had transformed his life, but for never allowing hardship to harden his heart. And somewhere between an ordinary sandwich, a heart-shaped leaf, and a little girl's peppermint candy, two lives had forever changed each other, not because one person was wealthy and the other was poor, but because both discovered that the richest people in the world are often the ones most willing to share what little they have.